Viewer voice messages, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a minute. Sorry. Again, y'all remember internet was out a couple of days, moving and shaking, all kind of stuff. So we are behind on the SpeakPipe voicemails. We've got it's got to be 25, 30 of these things. So we're going to go ahead and knock these out. Enjoy, kick your feet up. It's probably a long video. So if you want to send me a message, if you want to send me a voice message about football, the Saints, sports, anything, life, whatever, Q&A, you can have your voice heard with the face of the franchise. Go to speakpipe.com. It is in the link, or a link is in the description of every single video we have. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and start. CJ kicks us off. We're going to start from the most recent. Okay, so we're going to start from yesterday all the way to 2 weeks ago. So let's go ahead and start. Here we go.
I see a lot of people say we should get rid of Carr, and I don't think so. I think we should really keep him in the sense of he's a veteran. Because right now, at this point, the organization knows, and everybody in that whole building knows from top to bottom, that this whole team is going to get an overhaul from players to coaches. So, with that being said, and we already know Carr is not going to be the franchise quarterback. That's just said and done. Not his fault. Just shit happens. So, 9 times out of 10, the new coach is going to look for a quarterback in the draft. If it's not this year, then next year. So I think the best thing is to have a veteran quarterback for the new guy.
All right. Well, here's the algorithm. Here's the problem. So I agree. Like, Carr probably is not the franchise quarterback. Carr is not the long-term answer. He's going to be 34 years old next year. Expensive. He gets more expensive as his deal goes on, unless there's a restructure. So let's just round it out. Okay. Let's just say $40 million goes to Derek Carr for years 4 and 5. Which I believe is low. I think the last year like 50 something million. So if the idea is we need a veteran quarterback to just kind of exist and then we'll figure things out, wouldn't it be better for the franchise to get a veteran quarterback for about $30 million cheaper and use that money and allocate it to boosting the roster than just saying, F it, let's just keep Carr there. Whatever, let's just pay him $40 million. No big deal. So I'm not saying exactly this guy, but let's say you go get Joe Flacco. And let's say you pay Joe Flacco $3 million. What would be better for the front office? What would you do if you were the front office? Because the only reason to really pay Carr, or the only reason to keep Carr, is if you think you can win, right? Like, you're not paying a quarterback $40 million to just be a veteran to kind of watch over the quarterback room and kind of keep things chilling while you figure out the rest. And you could take it a step further. What if you got a veteran, journeyman, who has been around but still has some upside, like how the Vikings did with Sam Darnold, or how the Jaguars seem to be trying to do with Mac Jones? Like, what if you go look around there? And again, I'm not saying to go get Mac Jones, but there are a lot of options out there where it's way cheaper and it's kind of doing the exact same thing. So going along with your assessment of this, your assessment actually would be that it makes sense to not keep Derek Carr. Now, again, this is all financial stuff. Like, this has nothing to do with level of play. This has nothing to do with any of that, because I think we can all agree, like, the Saints aren't winning anything fast. The Saints are not, the roster is not good enough to win. So the idea of like, well, if Carr just had this, or the offensive line was this, or this was this, those arguments are out the window. So I mean, it's all back of the napkin math right now. Like, we're just doing it sitting here. You have to look at the actual contract, which the front office is absolutely doing. But I think from just a business standpoint, long-term standpoint, and as far as like what the Saints are trying to do right now, I think it makes sense to try and clear the space and move on.
Because it would be good for them to learn under someone that's at least successful, or just a veteran in general that has someone to learn under, and then give the reins to. And then if not, if it doesn't work financially, fair enough. Then at that point, I think you should still go after a veteran, go after your Joe Flacco or whoever else, and give them like a 2-year cheapest deal that you can to give.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you could do the exact same thing you're talking about with Ryan Tannehill or Joe Flacco or whoever, name your veteran quarterback, and you can do it for $30 million cheaper, why would you not? What is the reason not?
Give the reins to the next quarterback. I don't know. I think that would be better because I don't think the Saints should draft a quarterback and then just throw him in there. And
I
especially with
agree with
these
that.
quarterbacks, I think these
Yeah.
quarterbacks need a little bit of development. I don't think they're really as generational, like day one starters like Joe Burrows of the world and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean, I think we all, I think we all kind of agree on this with the whole Carr situation. And again, like I don't know it may be a situation where cutting Carr or releasing Carr or moving off of Carr actually cost you more than it would to keep him. It would, or maybe it's all just kind of the same. And if it's all kind of the same, then yeah, keep him, whatever. Like you're saying, just keep a veteran there. No harm, no foul. Gives a young quarterback time to develop. So it really depends on what that actual math is, what that actual, and it's not as simple. Don't forget, guys, it's not as simple as just he's making blank amount of money for blank amount of years, salary cap equals blank. The way that the Saints restructure contracts, the way that they move cash into bonuses, into incentives, into like you got to factor all that in. So a lot of the times the numbers aren't even what they seem to be. So think about that as well. Good stuff, though, CJ. Michael, you are up next.
Hey James, how's it going?
What's
So I
up, brother?
wanted to hear your opinion on two things.
All right.
What do the Saints need to do to straighten up the defense?
Get better.
Secondly, I've been thinking that this year's Saints feels a lot like last year's Broncos. Similar QB situation, people calling to move on from Wilson, just like Carr. New head coach, defense flipping roles because it was strong last year, but it's struggling this year, like the Broncos were last year. I was just curious if you saw the similarities and if we could follow suit and turn it around with the Broncos.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell. The Broncos have one huge advantage, obviously, is that they have Sean Payton. And Sean Payton has proven he can turn around a franchise. He turned around the Saints, right? So the Broncos also have a huge advantage where it seems like they've got a more than capable rookie quarterback. Like it's very easy to build off of a more than capable rookie quarterback. So that's a hell of a tandem. If we had that, yeah, sure. If we had a proven head coach who can turn around a franchise and we had a more than capable young quarterback, absolutely. There would be some similarities there. As far as the defense, like the defense is kind of the same as the offense, where and I saw our commenter left a comment that was so perfect. And it was basically like Saints fans are elevating mediocre players into like core players or starters or A-level players, when in reality, they're just kind of mediocre players. Like how many times have we heard like, oh, we just need Paulson and Debo back, or we just need, whatever, Will Harris, or we just need Jordan Howden to play a little better, or we need this player. And at the end of like on offense, it's like, well, if MVS can do this, or if Kevin Austin can do this, or Jawan and Foster. But if you took like 100 steps back and just looked at the surveyed the league, like all those players you're naming are just C-level players. Like Foster Moreau, Jawan Johnson, they might as well be any other tight end in the NFL. There's no difference between them and Hunter Henry, or there's no difference between them and Pat Fryermuth, right? Like they're just all kind of C-level players. Same with the defense. Like Paulson and Debo is just third cornerback for like any team in the NFL. Jordan Howden is the 25th safety in the NFL. That's probably a little high. So I think, and for fans that really focus on one team, it's hard to see that. It's hard to see the forest through the trees, and you kind of just like, well, we can develop Kevin Austin. It's like, no, you don't need to develop Kevin Austin. You need to get better receivers. You don't need to develop like these, 68 overalls. Go get better players. Skip that developmental process and go get them. Whether it's free agency, trades, draft, there's a lot of ways to get good players. So that's what we got to do on the defense. We got to quit relying on just kind of mediocre players to have above average results. Kermit, here we go.
Hey, yo.
My man's at work. You love to see this. Kermit, car detailer extraordinaire. That sounds like a vacuum in the back. Unreal dedication. Man said, you know what? I'm in the middle of the shift. I got to make a call to the superstar.
James, it's Kermit the Frog. I'm at work, man. I just want you to know that I think why the Saints shouldn't give Jake Hayner, you know, a chance at starting is because he took PEDs in the preseason and he still looks mediocre.
Now that's a great point. On one hand, it's never wrong to be strong. And I'm always going to advocate for PRs. I'm always going to advocate for risking it all to get a better squat or risking it all to bench a little bit more. You know, if you're hard stuck at 285 on bench and you want to get to 300 pounds, get to GNC, look on the bottom shelf and take what you got to take. It is what it is, right? Up your caloric intake by a couple thousand, really negatively affect your health and negatively affect your sleep, possibly give yourself sleep apnea from the level of girth that you're adding in a short period of time. But if it means you finally hitting 300 pounds on bench and that's it, then fine, So I'm with you. Now on the second side of that, yeah, if you're going to do that and you're going to risk it all to get absolutely jacked and stacked, and you don't get jacked and stacked, or you're still benching 225 or something, if you're risking it all to deadlift, I don't know, like 255 for 3, like if that's what you're doing, yeah, you probably need to take a hard look in the mirror.
I think he's a mediocre quarterback. He's Bryce Young but worse. I know
worse.
you.
Yeah.
I know you don't like to hear it, and I feel like Bryce Young was so bad. Him looking below average now, it's what Carolina Panther fans were looking for. But I don't think Jake Hayner is. No. Start Spencer Rattler, and if he's not it, you go get a QB in one of these drafts coming up. I would prefer Arch Manning in 2026, or draft an injured Carson Beck, or
Carson Beck sucks, by the way.
trade up to get Shador Sanders. That's what I would do, and I would build around that.
So the end is not correlated with Hayner or Rattler. So if you want to draft Shador Sanders or if you want to draft Arch Manning in 2026, that has nothing to do with the play of Jake Hayner and Spencer Rattler. You can still do all that, but you have to see what you have in Hayner and Rattler, either to keep them on the roster or to offload them, or just so you know from a franchise. Now, you mentioned, I don't want to hear it, that Hayner sucks. I am the rare channel or the rare analysis hub that is not biased at all. I don't care. I have no loyalty or allegiancy to these players. I'm rooting for them, but if a player sucks, I will say they suck. If a player is below average, I will say they're below average. That's one gripe I have with a lot of content creators, is they're fans first. Like, they're not fans. They're fanboys first. Like, they're obsessive fans first. They're biased first. Like, Pelicans content creators are really bad about this. Like, I see Pelicans content creators all the time who are like, I have a gut feeling we're going to get the win tonight. The Pels got it tonight, guys. Don't worry. And you look at the Pelicans are like 16-point dogs on the road, and all their starters are out. It's like, it's okay to say that they're going to lose. It's okay to say that, we're hurt. Javonte Green is not the answer. It's okay to say that Brandon Boston Jr. is not an all-star. Okay. And the Saints kind of deal with that too sometimes, where I've already seen people say that Jake Hayner is going to be the next Drew Brees. My brothers in Christ, Jake Hayner is one of the worst backups in the NFL. Can he prove everybody wrong? Yeah, sure, of course. But the odds are not in his favor to do that. It's just not the case. I cannot tell you how many comments I've gone through already that are like, you're wrong, Jake Hayner's going to throw for 400 yards Sunday. You're wrong, Jake Hayner's going to light it up. You screenshot this, Jake Hayner's going to throw for 5 touchdowns. It's like that. It's so one side or the other. Like, instead of saying, oh yeah, Jake Hayner might be serviceable, which would be an upgrade. It's like, oh, Jake Hayner's going to be the next generational quarterback, or Jake Hayner's going to have a 400-yard game. It's like, I don't think that's the case. Right. So it doesn't hurt my feelings. I think Jake Hayner is a backup quarterback. Like, I'm not expecting him to do much in this game. I'm not expecting him to prove anything in this game. I hope he does, but I think we're just going to kind of watch how he operates. So yeah, I don't think this has any long-term effect on the planning for the Saints. Jay, you're next.
What's up, James? I had to stop your "Are Saints Still Alive" video mid-video.
All right.
Why? Because I had to speak my mind real quick. I had
Let it
something.
rip. Let it rip. I like that. My man said, I'm watching the video. I got to stop it. I got to pause it. I got to go have my voice be heard. I can't put all this in the comments section. I like that.
I had a vision, not a vision, but a thought come to my head.
Okay.
And I was thinking, why not bring Kubiak and Darren Rizzi back? You feel me? Why not bring him back as the head coach and offensive coordinator? And hear me out, James. I understand it has been a complete shit show this season. Besides the first 2 weeks, it has been a complete shit show. But like you said, the team naturally expires in 2 years.
Yeah.
Just naturally.
Yes.
So why not just give Darren Rizzi and Klint Kubiak a fair opportunity to run and operate an entire NFL season and see where the team ends up? I feel like it's no down to it. It's nothing that we don't benefit from it. It's just, I feel like it's all the same thing. You feel me?
Yeah.
Just give them an opportunity and see where it goes. But other than that, appreciate you, James. Appreciate
Absolutely.
your time.
Yep.
Appreciate what you do, man.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Boom. I mean, look, I like the idea of Kubiak and Rizzi coming back. I think right now, what, they're 3-1. Right now, they have it. I would say they're the front runners. Problem is, they're staring down the Washington Commanders with Jake Hayner. They're staring down on the road in prime time against the Green Bay Packers, probably with Jake Hayner. They are staring down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road, probably with the division on the line for the Buccaneers. And they have the Raiders at home. So if that 3-1 turns into an 0-4 slide at the end of the season, if that turns into a 1-3 slide at the end of the season with a couple of ass whippings, then there's no reason to bring them back. You're not going to bring a group back just to bring a group back. They have to prove something, which was why I was so adamant after the Giants game that they wasted an opportunity. The Giants and the Raiders are teams that you have to throttle. If you're Klint Kubiak, you have to do something, because that's another bad thing about the Giants is where, it's like, well, the Saints have had a bad situation this season. There's been a lot of injuries. There's been a lot of this. There's been a lot of that. The Giants were a situation where the Saints were in a great spot. Like, all things considered, they had a healthy offensive line. They had, Alvin Kamara, Kendra Miller was back. Like, I know Taysom was out, and obviously Olave and Shaheed. But if you can't do something against the Giants, like, let's just pretend that the Saints play relatively similar to how they played against the Giants for the rest of the season. You're probably going 1-3 and 0-4, and your offense is probably scoring somewhere around 16 points a game. If you do that, and you're Klint Kubiak coming to the table, what exactly are you saying? Like, what is the reason why you should be brought back? Just because you've been here? Just because you have a parking space? So you got to show something. I like the idea of Rizzi and Kubiak. I like the idea of them coming back. But I don't like that idea if we keep watching performances like we did against the Giants and if we keep losing games. So they are the front runners. I think they have a chance. I definitely see the benefits of bringing them back, but they have to help themselves at some point. Austin Jacobs, you're up.
Sorry about this, James. I know it's basically a three-parter for this.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he goes back to back to back. All right, let's start with his first call so we get it in order.
Hey, James. I'm a huge fan of the channel, man. After watching that game, the Giants game, it just got me so shooked up because, yes, Derek Carr's out, and, Darren Rizzi's post-conference, man, I get it. He kind of hyping the players, trying to get them into it. Oh, the season ain't over. Because realistically, It's not. Anything can
Yeah, mathematically it's not. Realistically, it is.
happen and all stuff. Players get hurt. Look at the Falcons. They could have a lot of things go on. They could lose. Same with Tampa Bay. There's a lot of things that can happen. So it's still kind of open. But like my biggest thing is like then if Derek Carr's out for the year, like people are pushing for Hayner or Rattler. My thing is this: it's like like my question is like is it wrong to start either or? Like who's the right one to start? But it's like Darren Rizzi. Like my question is like, is he worth having back as a head coach? Like I hated him at first, but like a part of me feels like he's the best option to build the culture. Like he may not be the long term head coach to get us back to be able to win the championship, but like I think with him as a culture guy, he makes the best sense. But I'm kind of just on the fence. Like, is Mike Vrabel worth looking into? Like, I hear Joe Brady on the news. Like, I hear all these guys. Like, is it just better just to not to have a guy that's offensive defensive minded, just get a culture guy that doesn't call plays like Mike Tomlin, guys like them we need. I feel like guys that can build culture like Mike Tomlin, Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh.
Well, I mean that is part of the conversation. I mean, granted, like Sean Payton is one of the greatest offensive play callers of the last 20 years, but that is part of the conversation of like what you want moving forward. Now, if you believe that Klint Kubiak is a really good offensive coordinator, then maybe you do take a step back and say, yeah, I'll just go with the I'll go with the culture guy, and then I'll have Kubiak as the OC. Like that changes things, sure. Now, if you're talking about Vrabel, and you're looking at this whole thing of, okay, well, we need to rebuild the roster. We need to rebuild everything. Vrabel is a culture guy, but he's also a former play caller defensively. He's also kind of proven he can do some stuff. So that does fit the slot, right? Like we do need a new DC, you would think. We do need that. So he kind of solves two problems. So it depends on who you're interviewing. Is Joe Brady really an option? Is Ben Johnson an option? Is Vrabel an option? Is Zach Taylor going to get fired? Is Brian Daboll going to get fired? Like, who are options, right? Like, who's even out there? So you got to prop up, or you got to compare Rizzi and Kubiak with potentially what the other options look like. And there's a lot of other options that are pretty appealing. Austin Jacobs ×2.
This is part two to that. Like, I'm just curious of what should the Saints look forward to in this offseason, like as coaching wise, because like I like Klint Kubiak. I would love to see him be a Saints head coach one day, but like he's so new and this is his first year of actually calling plays. Is it worth just keeping Darren Rizzi, let him keep the same staff, maybe change DCs, which we're probably going to need it, just because who knows about Woods, how he's going to coach. And I grant we don't have great impactful players. We have a lot of old guys aren't impactful, and some that are on the fence of going downhill. But like I feel like if people want Klint Kubiak, is it right to say we need Darren Rizzi for next year? Because if Darren Rizzi, say next year we go in, we don't even win one fucking game, and we have amazing offense, but the defense is shit. Would it be right then? Is that the only way you can really see Klint Kubiak becoming it? Because I like Klint Kubiak. I ain't gonna lie. I'm not trying to ride.
Becoming a head coach? I mean, like, he's not even we're not even sure he's a good coordinator yet. Like Kubiak is way away from being a head coach candidate. Like we're not even close to that conversation.
His coattail, praise him, say, oh, he needs to be like our next Sean Payton. Honestly, I don't see it. But if Klint is a possibility in the future as the long-term head coach, would that be the only option you could see? I'm just curious because I'm just like, this Saints team, there's just so many issues. Like in this draft, we need fucking almost every pick in the draft.
Yeah, every
to
position.
refix this team. There's two.
Yeah, Austin Jacobs ×3.
Sorry about this, James. I know it's basically a three-parter for this, but like the draft, man, it's like, would it be if we go in the draft with Darren Rizzi? Wouldn't it be kind of like the best option for us, or a culture guy?
No, because there's a lot of guys who build culture. You would assume, like, or you would hope that whoever you choose as the head coach is going to build a culture, whether it's Ben Johnson or Joe Brady or Mike Vrabel or whoever. Like that's what you want from every head coach. So you could argue like it makes the least amount of sense to go in there with Rizzi, because if you don't think he's the long-term answer, then what good is it to build his culture? Right? Like, why would you want someone who's not the long-term answer to set the foundation for the franchise? Because then you would just have to rebuild a culture with whoever's in there. Like, whoever's in there is going to build their culture. Every team in the NFL who has a good head coach has their own independent culture. Sean McVay, the Rams have a culture. Sean McVay is very different than Mike Tomlin, but they've both built a culture. You know, so even the bad head coaches like Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys have a culture. It's just horrible. All right, so you know it's not, they don't fit perfectly into buckets as far as like culture builder or offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. Like sometimes they bleed over. Sometimes they are, you know, they're the same or they're multiple things. You know, so I don't think you can look at it like, well, if you get rid of Rizzi, then you lose the culture, because that's not the case. So as far as going into the draft, like this draft is so important, and next year's draft is so important that you want whoever is your long-term answer, you want them in that draft room. So if you think Rizzi is just a stopgap guy, you do not want him in that draft room. If you think Kubiak is just another year trial run situation, you don't want him in the draft room. You want the guy who you think is going to be there for a decade. You want the next Sean Payton. You want the next whatever. You want them in the draft room. So if you have any question marks about Rizzi or Kubiak, you have to go look at who the possible, you know, next Sean Payton, next Dan Campbell, next Sean McVay is.
I hear Aaron Glenn, but like whoever we get as a head coach, I start keeping Darren Rizzi. If he is the best option for us to build a culture, out of the picks we have options at the end of the season, wouldn't it be better to keep a culture guy and just, obviously we don't have a whole lot of draft capital, but we have a decent amount to where we can at least, if we hit on at least two starters,
You got to hit on more than that. You got to hit on more than that.
And maybe, you know, a guy that's he has a possibility of becoming impactful. Maybe, you know, after that year, he may become impactful. Like, I know we have to hit because there's so many holes we got to fix.
Yeah.
The defensive line, we got to, like, Chase Young, a great player. You can see a lot of him. He can't finish. I think we have to get, obviously, a D lineman, obviously O-line, without a doubt. There's no depth at the O-line. Or just two injuries.
But we don't need to draft depth. Like that is not what we need to be doing. We need to be drafting the next Puka Nacua, like the next like 5th round superstar. We need to be drafting the next Isaiah Pacheco, the next Kyron Williams, like these like late round guys who can step in and play at an all-pro level. And they are there at every single draft. Like they are there. We need to be drafting guys who are going to step in, play, dominate, be potential Pro Bowlers, potential best at their position. Like we do not need to be drafting like, well, this guy, no, we're going to take a cornerback because we think he might be able to be our next, you know, third. He could be a good slot corner. It's like, brother, you better be drafting the next Marshawn Lattimore. You better be drafting Pro Bowlers. You cannot draft depth.
Too many injuries there. Like, come on, I think on the Giants game we only had 3 of the original starters there. You know, Fuaga, Penning, and Cesar Ruiz. Oh, I'm sorry, 4. With Eric McCoy come back. I forgot he even came back. It didn't look like much where they're playing on offense. Couldn't even rush the ball. I'm just curious, where should...
I mean, the offensive line is kind of the spot where you're like, kind of all right. You know, like, I know there's been talk about the tackle from LSU. Was it Emory Jones, I think is his name? There's talk of him being a second-round pick, but there's also talk that he could slide down to guard and be a really good guard. So all of a sudden, that's a good example of, well, maybe you take him in the second round, plug him in immediately a left guard, and then you're walking around and you're saying like, okay, well, we're cool with the combination of Talise Fuaga, Jones, isn't that his name? Emory Jones? I don't want to get it wrong, but Talise Fuaga, Emory Jones, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and Trevor Penning. Like all of a sudden, it's like, well, offensive line is pretty young. You know, like that. Okay, we're rocking and rolling here. But I am not about taking players at this point in the Saints, you know, roster rebuild. I'm not. I think it's a horrible idea to take players that are rotational or depth players, or maybe in a couple of years can develop. Like you got to get you got to get someone who can come in and really do a job. Thank you, Austin, for the message. CJ, you're up next.
I probably have a lot of messages on here, but I have to say, if I'm not mistaken, I think we did not really even have Kendra and Kamara on the field at the same time. And I might have missed a few plays, but if I'm not mistaken, there wasn't a lot of times where we had both of them on the field, and when they are our two best running backs. And Kendrick showed a lot of fucking talent, and there's a lot of talent in that kid. Yes, he has been injured, but you can tell he has something. He has something to show for. So why the hell do we not have our two best players at fucking that on the field at the same time? This Shanahan offense is supposed to look the same, but it's also supposed to be different when the actual play is being done. So I just don't get that. And why did Kubiak run away from Kendre towards like the second half? Like the second half, he wasn't really even being utilized. We were just throwing Kamara in there and he's just getting stuffed because we're just not doing anything new. Like what is the Kubiak doing? What is your play calling like? Why are you throwing a sweep on 3rd and 1? Buddy, Kendre you're just setting them up for failure. Why are we sweeping on 3rd and 1? Just run him up the middle. You saw what he did already. Run the kid up the middle. Pound it through the middle. Pause. But like, what the
Big
fuck? Like, I
pause.
just don't get it. Throw Kamara and Kendrick on the same field at the same time. It's not that hard. You're making it harder than it needs to be.
Well, the running game is not up the middle for us. We are that wide zone, so it's going to be a majority of how we do this. As far as like Kendra's a good example of a player who people want to be really good, but as of right now, like the idea, like he has shown flashes. So yeah, I mean, I guess, but Jordan Mims showed flashes. You know what I mean? Like we just need to see more. Like when you come out of a game averaging 3 yards a carry, it's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, definitely saw something. So yeah, not really. Like I saw kind of the same thing I saw from Kamara. I saw a lot of negative plays. I saw a lot of getting bottled up. I saw a lot of nothing there. Is that all his fault? No, but it is part of it. Now, as far as were they on the field at the same time? Usually you can find that. Let me see if I can find it. All right, so I can't find the actual chart that I'm looking for, but usually you can find like percentage and personnel package percentages and things like that. But if you look at here, like this is a good example of how you got to go game to game. The Giants used base 3-4 on over half their defensive snaps. Tight 5-man fronts give the linebackers more time to fit and less time for climbing offensive line. The Saints' use of heavy personnel, which is the 12 package we talked about, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends, played into the strategy that Bowen wanted to employ to fortify the run defense. All right, so you got to kind of take it on a per game basis, which is what you want. You want your coordinators to be adjusting. So if this is a situation where Kubiak thought like, hey, this isn't working, like having the 2 running backs, 2 tight ends back there, this is playing right into what they're doing, then he's going to get away from it. So not saying this is the reason for it or any of that, but I think you do have to and that's kind of what we talk about on the channel, is that if you do have a question or you do have a thought, there is it is good to follow it, because usually you can find your answer. And that's why we always talk about analytical groups like Neflo and there's all these groups that you can find the actual percentages, you can find the actual answer to. And if I sat here for an hour or so, I could have this fully charted out to where you see okay, well, we actually did 12 personnel on this many plays, and on this, and those plays had this EPA, which is compared to this EPA. And so just think about that whenever you're going through those questions. But great line of thinking. Johannes, you are up next. Let's go ahead and listen to Johannes.
Hey, James. Coming to you from Oslo after the Giants game.
Yes.
I gotta say, I think this is one of the worst games of football I've ever seen. Absolutely everything was ugly.
Yeah.
This team does nothing well. But I do think that DA would have lost this game, so...
It's funny you say that, Johannes, because I was thinking the same thing, where it's a game where the Saints were begging to lose. It's a game where the Saints were doing everything they could to not win the game. And I did think during it, my first thought was, this is exactly the kind of game that DA would lose. This is the exact kind of game where at the end of the game you have to make, like, there's a couple decision points and there's a couple things going on that flip the entire game. And yeah, you're right. This is one that he would have lost. So you're spot on with that.
Guess the glass is half full. I just want to get your perspective on Kubiak, because to me it's shown that he struggles adapting once the defense figures him out. I saw a stat, and that the team scores significantly less points in the second half compared to the first. And I find it difficult to trust him without Taysom Hill. And without him, he hasn't really shown kind of anything to me. And now we don't know if Carr is hurt, but if Carr is hurt, I hope we see Rattler again. And I gotta say, if there is no improvement in Rattler's play, given that the O-line is healthy and everything, I think you can move on from him, probably. Like, you saw what the benching did to Bryce Young, so I hope we get a similar leap. But I don't know. A win is a win, but man, this was one ugly game.
So as far as Kubiak, like, yeah, I mean, this was the game that I was really kind of shaken up on Kubiak, because I've been a big time Kubiak supporter. Like, I've been the guy who's, saying, hey, no, let's give him as much, as many chances as possible. But this was the game where I was like, okay, what are we doing? There was a couple of plays there late, like, why are we throwing the football, or why are we rolling Jake Haener out, or why are we doing a read option with Derek Carr, where Derek Carr has the option to run to the sidelines? Like, what are we exactly doing here? There's a lot of that, and I don't know. This was definitely the first one, because as long, like, I separate the scheme from the results, because we don't have the same level of players that we should. Like, when you're throwing the ball to Cedric Wilson and Dante Pettis and MVS, you can't expect to see a ton of results from the passing game. But you do want to see the system and the scheme. Same with, like, running. Like, when we didn't have our offensive line, like, okay, we're not going to be able to run for 5 yards a carry. We Connor McGovern's our center, right? But this was the game where the system or the scheme or the philosophy was coming into question with the results. And this was definitely one where I was like, I don't know, man, this is not looking good. And I do agree. Like, I think this offense is the type of offense that gets stuck because it's so linear. I mean, it is run the football, establish the run, chew clock, matriculate down the field, play action. It's kind of the same thing over and over and over. And if it's not working, there isn't another version of the offense. Like, this isn't the kind of offense where it's like, all right, well, the zone run's not working, so let's go ahead and go to 4 wide, spread them out. Like, we don't really do that. And we definitely don't have the horses to do that. So it's kind of a perfect storm where you better hope your first strategy works. Otherwise, you're kind of cooked. As far as the second half being way less points in the first half, that's also part of this offense where if you're winning, then you just want to kill clock and dominate time of possession and run the ball. And whereas if you're losing, it's probably because the system isn't working. And so that's another thing where it's kind of a perfect storm where, of course, as the game goes on, less points are going to be scored. So it's not perfect. It's not pretty right now. The foundation is there, I think, for Kubiak, but like I said before, he's going to have to show me something. It's too late in the season for it all to be hypothetical, so he has to show me something. CJ, you're back up.
I might be wild for saying this, but I think Rizzy still is, at least in my like, as far as like coaching wise, when it comes to the aspect of man manager type of thing, I think Rizzy has it packed and understanding the analytical parts of things. I really do believe that. Like,
I think Rizzy's been pretty good, like, as far as the, like, game manager, operational, when you're using your timeouts, I think he's been pretty good with that. I think he's been way better than DA.
And I think really, and again, I think it's with this high risk, high reward thing. For example, like, Dan Campbell is a high risk, high reward, because Dan Campbell is a one hell of a coach when it comes to being a man manager, doing, getting everybody hyped, doing the scheduling and all these different things.
You know what's kind of funny about high risk, high reward is that if you do it correctly, the like fourth downs, field goals, extra points, 2-point conversion, that kind of thing. If you do it strictly by the math, it's actually the less risky thing to do, because if you're doing it correctly, you're increasing your percentage to win. So, like, let's just use like really easy math. Let's say you have a 50% chance to win the game, all right, and it's 4th and 1. And let's say going for it increases it to 55%. And let's say not going for it and punting keeps your win percentage at 50%. It's not risky at all to go for it because you're increasing your win percentage. It's like the easiest decision in the world. If you can increase, now there's a chance that you don't get it, of course. But as far as the decision, like that's something that I hear a lot, and I'm like, well, it's not risky. Like it's scary, I guess. Like it's scary to go for it versus punting because punting seems, it's always scarier to be proactive because you're basically putting it on the line. But as far as like a risk reward, it should never be considered high risk when it's the correct play or it's increasing your win percentage. So I do think sometimes that gets mixed up.
But the risk is he needs his offensive coach and his OC in DC to work. That's kind of the risk, because if that doesn't work, then it's like they're gonna look at the head coach like, dude, what are you doing? Your team is supposed to be good, And and I do believe Rizzy has good potential, and I think it's just really that same situation where he just needs those two pieces to fall together. Now again, the whole evaluation thing, that might not mean anything, and he might just be gone. Fair enough. I'm not going to be mad at the team for it. But I feel like there could be more to it.
Speak pipe, don't do this to me. Speak pipe, not like this. All right, let me reset here.
Hey James, man, I gotta say, fuck everything that I have said previously in these past messages. Just fuck it off. I'm just baffled, dude. Just baffled.
Must be after the Giants game.
I gotta say, Kubiak proved what I was thinking. Like, he generally can't run this offense without Taysom. I was trying to give him a grace, like, Taysom, since week 2, they haven't had like a full healthy offensive line. So, I'm thinking that maybe it's the offensive line that really isn't. Maybe Taysom's not needed. Obviously Taysom needed, but at least, he could be able to cook up something. Nope, not at all. Not one bit. I mean, we it seems like he just relies on Taysom. Like, he 100%, like, it is confirmed.
I don't think this is. I think what Kubiak relies on is the running game, and when you're running for 2.9 yards a carry, you're absolutely cooked. So Taysom is absolutely a offshoot of the running game, but it's more in the Giants game, at least. It was more that Kamara and Kendra just could not get going. What Kubiak really relies on is running the football, but even more importantly is staying ahead of the chains. The second we go first down, no yards, or first down, negative yards, or second down, negative yards, second down, no yards, you can go ahead and assume we're going to punt. That is the biggest death knell to this offense, is our ability to not move the ball on first down. The Giants game, we had like 12 negative plays. All right, well, that's probably going to be it. It's going to be cooked. So it's less Taysom, and it's more moving the ball early and establishing the run. Two things we did not do against the Giants.
It's Taysom. And the thing is, he just need to figure out something. He's just not as good as we thought. And, maybe he might be good with the pieces that he needs, but as an offensive coordinator, it gets to a point where it's like, dude, you already know how hurt this offensive is. You need to find some player that can fill in those certain roles. At least some part of the roles of Taysom, at least something.
I think a lot of Saints fans are finding out that just how, like, I keep saying this offense is linear, and it is linear. And the problem with a linear offense is that if you aren't doing what you want to do, it looks horrible. It is not an offense where it's like, all right, we're just going to spread them out and we're going to go play by play and try and figure this thing out. Like, it's not that. It is, we are going to run the football. We are going to get 4 yards. We are going to slow things down. We are going to go off play action, and we are going to try and find, passes in that short to intermediate. Well, when you can't run the ball in first down, or you can't run the ball in second down, or you can't run the ball at all, and you're in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, that's not what this offense does. It's not built for that. When you think about the 49ers, what's the worst situation for the 49ers? 3rd and 10. Worst situation, because they can't do play action, can't run the ball, and it's just Brock Purdy trying to operate. Now, the Niners, when healthy, have pieces. They have Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. 3rd and 10 for the Saints with Kevin Austin, MVS, Jawan Johnson, and Foster Moreau. That is an absolute nightmare. That is a nightmare scenario. So it is a frustrating offense when it doesn't work, for sure. But when it does work, like against the Cowboys and against the Browns even at times, it's awesome because it's 2nd and 4, the playbook is open, you can do sweeps and play action and motion, and you can do everything. But when it's 3rd and 10, you can't do any of that. When it's 3rd and 10, you can't do any of that. And when, at the same time, like I keep talking about, like, well, the 49ers or the Rams or the Dolphins, like, yeah, when they get in a situation, or the Vikings, like, yeah, when they get in a situation where it's 3rd and 10, they're in some trouble. Well, when it's 3rd and 10 for the Vikings, you have Justin Jefferson, it's a whole different story. When it's 3rd and 10 for the Dolphins, you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane, it's a whole different story. When it's 3rd and 10 for the Rams, and you have Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams, whole different story. When it's 3rd and 10 for the Saints, and you have Kevin Austin Jr., Cedric Wilson, Dante Pettis, like, it's kind of tough. Oh, and Jake Hayner's throwing him the ball. So it's you got to kind of put your hands up at a certain point and say, it's not. I mean, I'm not trying to take all the blame off of Kubiak, but it's hard to be like, Kubiak just doesn't know what he's doing when you're relying on those players to make plays.
Yo, James, it's Kermit the Frog, and I just wanted to send this message, man.
Yeah, let her rip. Yeah.
I think you see my comments in the comment section a lot.
No doubt. Yeah.
I think the Saints need basically a full reset. I say we offload all the vets, and we.
Well, remember, there's no button. There's no button to say refresh. There's no button to say release all the vets. There are, hoops you have to jump through. There's contract situations. There's salary cap. There is guaranteed money. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that happens. Same with, like, we just did a video about Bill Belichick in North Carolina. If Belichick is released before June 1st, cost the university $10 million. If he's released or whatever, bought out after the June 1st, it costs the university $1 million. So there are little tiny baby small print in every contract that has to be factored in. So the idea of like a previous call where it was like, oh, we just need to move on from Rattler, that's not even a possibility. You have Rattler on a rookie contract. If you release him, you have to sign someone else. Why would you allocate more money to that role? Why wouldn't you just keep Rattler and go through his rookie contract? Like, you don't have to move off of him. You don't have to, he's already your 3rd string quarterback. Like, you don't have to just cut and rebuild and cut and rebuild and go to the next player and cut and rebuild. That same with the veterans. Like, okay, you're saying offload the veterans. So you're releasing Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Ryan Ramczyk. Like, how much money does that cost you? What does their deals look like? Would it make more sense financially to let their contracts naturally expire? Would it make more sense to trade them? Would it make sense to restructure? Would it make sense to, like, it's not as simple as offload this player or move on from this player or whatever. So I know as a fan, it can be tempting to have that line of thinking, but it's not always the case.
Start trading players for draft picks. I say we do everything in our power.
Trade's another thing. It takes 2 people to trade. In Madden, it takes 1, right? You can kind of do whatever you want. In the real world and in the NFL, who the hell is trading for Cam Jordan? Who the hell is trading for Taysom Hill? Who the hell is trading for all these players? So who actually are you trading? You know, like, probably no one. You're certainly, like, no one's going to trade a 3rd-round draft pick or a 4th-round draft pick for Cam Jordan. No one's going to make those trades. So you got to factor that in too, where it's not as easy. And then also you got to balance the salary cap. So you can't trade. It's very difficult to trade players for draft picks with no money coming in or coming out. Very difficult to do that. So, you know, it's more to it.
To get a Ben Johnson, I don't want to believe that, you know, he just doesn't want to come over to New Orleans just because, you know, everyone says he doesn't want to. You know, maybe he wants to rebuild a team from scratch and, you know, just kind of do it himself. I feel like that's like coach ego thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams. I mean, there's a lot of teams. Like any team, I mean, theoretically, any team that's looking for a new coach, it can rebuild from scratch. The Saints' problem is that you're entering a team with horrible contract situations, an aging team. Like it is not a good situation. If you're Ben Johnson, why would you not want to go to Chicago? Why would you not want to go to Cincinnati if it becomes available? You know, why would, even like the Giants? The problem is, like, the Saints just aren't a good situation for a coach to enter. If you're Ben Johnson, if the Bengals fire Zach Taylor, why the hell would you not go to Cincinnati? Unless, like, you just meet with the owners, you don't like the owners. But you could walk into a situation with Joe Burrow under contract with Jamar Chase. Like, I mean, you talk about see what you can do, right? Why would you want to go in, like, and then there's, I mean, that's not even factor in, like, where people are from, and, you know, certain coaches want to go to, you know, their childhood team, or, you know, they have a affinity for certain cities. So, but there's a lot that goes into all that.
And, you know, I'm watching the Saints game versus the Giants right now, and for some reason, Jamal Williams is still returning kickoffs. So, man, I can't do it no more. I cannot defend this team. I cannot defend the coaching. I cannot defend the drafting. I can't defend anything. I'm done trying to defend it. I can't defend Derek Carr. You can't. I won't listen to him being good. He's played horrible against good teams, and he's played good against bad teams. That's what QBs like him and Dak Prescott do. I think we should try to draft Arch Manning in 2026, or maybe Carson Beck in 2025.
Let me just say something about the Arch Manning thing too. I saw this on Twitter. My boy Trizzy Trace had an Arch Manning graphic up. We don't know anything about Arch Manning. Like, in what like, how does it make any sense to be like, no, we're going to draft Arch Manning in 2026, and that's going to set us right? We don't even know if he's good. Why are we talking about drafting a player not after this season, but after next season? You're talking about like 20 months away for a guy that we don't even know if he's good, for a guy that doesn't even start, for a guy that isn't even the best quarterback on his own college team, much less the best quarterback in college. Why is Arch Manning? I mean, I don't understand why Arch Manning is in the conversation. I do understand that Manning is, you know, Archie Manning. I do understand that Manning is a New Orleans name, and it's a fun thing to think about and whatever. But I mean, you might as well, like, does Peyton and Eli have any kids? You might as well just say one of them. Like, well, in 10 years, we'll draft Eli's son. I mean, we'll be good. Yeah, in 12 years, we're going to draft Peyton's nephew, and then boom, we got a man. We're locked and loaded, baby. I mean, does T-Bob have a son or something? Like, can we just draft them? Like, can we say that we have to? I mean, that kind of stuff is just straight up like fantasy football. I don't. The Arch Manning stuff misses me. Until Arch Manning is good, like, it straight up misses me. Austin Jacobs, back to back. Let's go. Let's start right here.
Hey man, it's Austin. I'm a huge fan of the channel. I had a couple
Appreciate that.
before the game this week on the Rams. Honestly, with the Saints losing Taysom Hill, I kindly lost a lot of hope in this season. I know that we're probably gonna have a higher draft pick, kind of like last year, but probably even higher. I'm not saying I'm gonna lose hope in the Saints, but a part of me is just like, what do we do now? Like,
So I've talked about this a million times, but like you got to watch her. You got to watch your. You got to evaluate players. You got to see who is part of the future. You got to evaluate Kubiak. You got to evaluate the system. You got to evaluate Rizzi. Like right now, it is evaluation season. It is. You know what's crazy about the Rams game? The Rams have been on an absolute tear, except for when they played the Saints. Puka Nacua had more receptions and yards in an absolute hurricane against the Niners in a game that didn't have a touchdown than he did against the Saints. That game is an anomaly. In the dome, and neither team could do anything. And then you see the Rams beat the Bills, and you see Puka Nacua go off against the 49ers, and then you see the Saints barely hang on to beat the Giants. Like, how did all that happen? That game is an absolute anomaly.
Like, are we just going to just take this season to just evaluate everybody, or or is Darren Rizzi going to keep trying to just make the playoffs? And
Rizzi is going to try and win every game because Rizzi's trying to be the head coach. Kubiak is going to try and win every game because Kubiak's trying to keep a job. So those guys are going to treat this like the Super Bowl. The quarterbacks, Jake Haener, this is his Super Bowl. So you got a weird mix mash of motivation.
Keep doing what he's doing. Like, what's the goal? Like the outline of this season? Like, obviously we're nowhere near a championship team.
No.
Like, what was the goal? Is it to win? Our division. If that's even possible.
I mean, right now mathematically the goal is to win the division, but you just got to take it game by game and evaluate players, and then eventually we get into mock draft season and coach interviews and whatnot.
It still is kind of up in the air, but I'm just kind of confused what we're gonna do, what this season is gonna be about. Is it just evaluating and trying to win the division, or is it just trying to just get as many wins we can? I really would like to see Darren Rizzi as the head coach next year until we can find, at least if he isn't the guy, find a better option. I just think him as a culture guy is what we really need in New Orleans. And I know with Taysom Hill going down, he may not even be back in the Saints, or if not, as
all right, boom, back to back, Austin, boom.
Hey man, it's Austin again, part 2 for that one. With Taysom Hill being hurt and stuff, like him may not be back as a Saint, and also if he is, may not be as good as he was. Like, I got a feeling that Kamara is our Drew Brees right now, the face of our franchise besides you. Like, as a player perspective, I just feel like if we lose Kamara.
Yeah, I mean, Kamara is the talisman. That's why signing him made so much sense. Like, you have to have a guy. You have to have a foundational player. It's obviously Alvin. Like, Alvin is obviously the face of the New Orleans Saints besides me.
Kamara, granted he has 2 years left, but like if we lose, I feel like he's like the piece that we need to keep. And if Darren Rizzi, because I feel like he's just as a culture guy, I think he's the guy that can at least keep this team on the path to at least, develop and get guys in and build a foundation. I think he's the blueprint, the foundation right now. Granted, there could be better guys like Mike Vrabel, can never pronounce his name right. There's other culture guys. You can even say Bill Belichick, but I just don't think you want to risk going with an older guy like Bill Belichick. I think Darren Rizzi may be a guy you want to take a shot at for next year. I'm not sure if I guess I am getting ahead of myself looking for next year, not so much of this year. Like, what is the thing that Saints fans should be happy about for this season, the rest of this season, and going forward to just to not focus so much on next year? What is the one thing you would say the reason why you should stay watching the Saints? Is it just to evaluate players, see what we got? Like, I'm just kind of lost at this point. Like, I'm always gonna be a diehard Saint.
Yeah, I mean, you watch the games to you want to root for the team. Like, you want to watch the game, you want to win, you want to evaluate the players, see what you have, and that's it moving forward. Like, then you evaluate, you see how this goes the rest of the season. Okay, maybe the rest of the season proves like you don't want Kubiak or proves you don't want Rizzi. Okay, well then who do you want? What do you want? Like it proves. I mean, who knows? Like Jake Haener might be the best quarterback on earth for the next 4 games. Okay, well, that changes everything, right? So, I mean, only one team wins the Super Bowl. Only a certain amount of teams make the playoffs. So it can't be like, well, if we can't win the Super Bowl, what the hell am I even watching for? Like there's a lot of teams that do not have a chance to win the Super Bowl. There's a lot of teams that do not have a chance to make the playoffs. There's still reason to watch. For the Saints, I'll tell you what, if you want something to be excited about, we're in the situation where the next chapter of the New Orleans Saints franchise is being built all around us. So embrace the journey, embrace that. We are the year before Sean Payton. We're right there where we're 3-13. We're firing Jim Haslett. And imagine a Saints fan being like, I don't know what there is to be excited about. Little do they know Sean Payton's coming. Little do they know Drew Brees is coming. Little do they know a Super Bowl, a 15-year run. Like that could be on the horizon. So, chin up here, and watch the games, evaluate, and then watch college games, evaluate college players, watch the Senior Bowl, go to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still football being played, and that's good enough for me.
Hey, James, I'm about to hit you with a double message. I do recommend to listen to my previous.
Okay, let's listen to that first.
Hey, James, hope you're doing good, man. I gotta say that loss was tough. The whole game was tough to watch in general. So it was very slow and boring. Yeah. It's very tough to watch. But besides that, I gotta say, I'm kind of satisfied with Rizzi. And what I mean by that is like watching him as far as the decision making that he has, like with the 4th and 1s and all that other shit, and him in the press conference saying that if we scored, I would have went for 2. And I agree with that one. I don't know. I could tell Rizzi has a vision, and he is trying to apply that vision. I think the problem is he just needs the other pieces to fall down, like the defense to be good and the offense to be really good.
Well, I mean, yeah, like every head coach has a vision, and they need the defense to be good and the offense to be really good. Like that, I think every coach would sign on for that.
Because obviously the defense just needs to be at least manageable, and the offense needs to be the higher part of the team right now. And I really think that's just what it is.
Well, that's part of it too, where like we've said a million times, you're asking the offense to be really good with some combination of Derek Carr, Jawan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Cedric Wilson, Dante Pettis, MVS, Kendra Miller, Jake Haener. Like, do those pieces sound like they could be the pieces of a really good offense? No.
Unfortunately, if he keeps losing, then, it's kind of going to be one of those, you might have to get out of there. But
yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Even if he loses, do we say get out of here? Because generally, what if it is just a little bit, everything needs a reset of next year. Just this offseason, everything just needs a reset, and that's what it is. Hey, James, I'm about to hit you with a double message. I do recommend to listen to my previous message just to give context, because this is going to be a continuation. And so, but what I mean by reset in the offseason, I mean, like, I feel like we need to reset the offensive side and the defensive side. Well, first off, the offensive side, I think it just needs more of a reset with player-wise. Because I feel like
both sides need a roster turnover / rebuild.
We just need.
But again, like think about how fast this can happen. If let's say the Saints go 0-4 to finish the season. Let's say the Saints are the 6th pick in the draft. Let's say the Saints move up and take, or let's say they don't even move up. Let's say they take Cam Ward 6 overall. And let's say someone like Ben Johnson or Joe Brady is intrigued by the idea of having a top 6 pick and having Cam Ward. So let's say next year we've got Ben Johnson and Cam Ward. Just that alone, it's like, wow, it's a completely different ideology, completely different team, completely different, everything's different. So you just kind of gotta, and these voicemails are a good example of why it's dangerous to go week to week. Because 1 week it's like, I like what Rizzi and Kubiak's doing. The next week it's like, get these guys out of there. They don't know what the hell's going on. The next week it's like, well, actually Rizzi's okay. Kubiak sucks. The next week it's, Well, actually, hold on a second. Kubiak's okay. You got to kind of just let this thing play out, see the whole puzzle, see what we have going on here, and then go from there. But I mean, the same like with Arch Manning. Like there's no point in talking about Arch Manning in 2026. Like think about how much that doesn't matter if we draft Shedeur Sanders. Then there's no conversation about Arch Manning in 2026. You know, like if we come out of the draft with one of those guys, like all that's gone. All the Spencer Rattler talk, all the Jake Haener talk, all the Derek Carr talk. The second we bring in, you know, Cliff Kingsbury and he drafts Shedeur, like see ya Jake Haener, see ya Spencer Rattler. So you got to kind of take one step in these situations. You got to go one foot in front of the other at the end of the season and leading into the offseason.
Certain key pieces for Kubiak to really make this offensive run for a whole season, because we see what Shanahan and McVay offense does with those key player injuries. It just falls apart. So I really do feel like Kubiak is good enough. And I do also feel like he needs to improve, but he's good enough to really continue on. With Darren Rizzi, I think he can be a good head coach for us. And the thing is, he also on the other hand, he needs his defensive side to start working. Like, and the thing is, for that to happen though, we need Joe Woods out. We need that whole defense. The whole defense needs to be teared down.
I mean, the defense actually, like over the last couple of games, the defense has probably been the better side of the ball. I mean, the defense, like I said, held the Rams absolutely in check. It wasn't just a score thing; it was a straight up like stats thing. They kept the Rams in check. You know, until the end of the game, they kept the Giants in check. So the defense has actually been kind of okay. The offense has been horrible,
top to bottom, from coaches to certain players. It just needs a whole reset. Offensive side, I feel like there is a hill to go over, but I feel like it's not as big as the defense needs. Like the defense really just needs a new scheme and players. Offense has a scheme; it just needs better players. So I don't know. I feel like Rizzi could work out.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, I know he sent that message before the Giants game, but right now, I think they're both kind of the same. Like it's a lot of hypotheticals. It's a lot of we're not totally sure what we have, and you got to kind of watch it and see where we go. All right, we're going to go Will here.
Hey, what's going on, James? I'm a longtime listener.
Will coming in absolutely hot.
My question for you today is, once Taysom Hill retires, do you think the Saints will ever try to find a player who replicates Taysom Hill in a sense and continue that style of offense? Or do you think once he leaves, it's over with?
I think every team in the NFL will start to look at the player who can do multiple things. I think that Taysom Hill's a bit of a unicorn because of the special teams and the quarterback situation, but I think players, if you watch college football, like Tyler Warren from Penn State or the quarterback from Army, like players like that where they can do multiple things and they're kind of unique and they run special packages. And I think football or the NFL is getting more to that. And I think you're going to see more players like that where they can play fullback and tight end or tight end and receiver or quarterback and running back, or, you know, they can do all these different things and they're in all these different packages and they're mismatch nightmare or they're matchup nightmares. And so I think in a way they probably will. I don't think we'll ever see another player play quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, and special teams. But I think we will see players that are drafted do multiple things. You know, like Cam Scadaboo, like from Arizona State. He's a running back, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if all of a sudden they're lining him up at fullback, halfback, and tight end. Like I wouldn't be surprised, or wide receiver or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were using him like that. So I think, I don't think we might necessarily see another Taysom, but I do think teams will try and replicate what like the hybrid player.
James, you're the man, bro. You'll be the best sports. If you were on ESPN, you'd be the best. If you were on Fox, you'd be the best. And you're for sure the best sports show on YouTube, man. You cover all things gambling, skiing, personnel, coaches, debates, And you really are. You're legit, man. I really do think you're the best guy. You're the primary guy I listen to. You tell like it is. But what I like to do.
I mean, that might be the comment of the year. I mean, damn. That might be the comment of the year right there. Yeah. I mean, he's right. Like we are on a whole different level. I mean, the other day I did a video where just at the end of the video on a whim, I just said, you know what? I bet I can probably name where every single quarterback, the draft pick they were picked at, and the college they went to, and we let it rip. And I guarantee you, if you go on that, I bet on average I'm like 5 picks off. I had a commenter who was like, Josh Allen was taken 10th. You said he was 17th. It's like, brother, I'm 7 picks off. Like, I bet some of those are on the pick. I bet some of them are right there. And the fact that on average I'm probably like 5 picks off for the entire NFL, whereas other players or other analysts, they don't even know where these players went to college. They don't even know what round these people were picked in. So, yeah, we are. I mean, I really, obviously, I think we're the best at what we're doing. I think we do come at this differently, whether it's from a sports betting standpoint, whether it's from the debate standpoint, whether it's from the hot take or the rant standpoint or breaking down stuff. Like, yeah, we do it all. And I appreciate that comment. But I do think this, I do think the content and what we're doing here, I think is way above what other people are doing.
Just kind of give you your props, man, give you your flowers. If you could grace me with 2 more voice calls, because I'm not going to be able to get all my thoughts in one. But what I like to do is kind of start off and get your thoughts on something that Nick Underhill said. It was a Saturday call, and he basically said that not only do you need a coach to come in and rebuild, you need a coach to come in and tear down. I disagree with that as much as Nick Underhill is legit and how good he is. I don't think the Saints need someone to completely tear down, because you have one side of the ball that's actually pretty positive, and that's the offensive side. The defensive side is pretty sad. It's expensive. A lot of the contracts that don't make sense are on the defensive side of the ball. But I'll get to both, and we'll kind of figure that out. And then kind of what my thoughts on the future of the Saints are, and I want your thoughts on what you think my thoughts are. So we'll see, man.
So real quick, I don't know the exact context of what the call he's talking about with Nick, but I do think like if you look at it as a house, like if you're rebuilding a house, if you have someone come in and they're developing a piece of property or they're developing a whatever, like there is some aspect of tearing down that happens while building up happens. Like you do have to kind of get down to the studs before you can do the rest of the rebuild. And the Saints or any rosters like that, and sometimes the tear down is like philosophical, where you may tear down culture, you may tear down, some issues that are happening within the locker room or within the facilities or within whatever. You may have to tear down some of that, and you may have to tear down. So there is some aspect of that goes into a rebuild.
So, James, I wanted to get your thoughts on like the defensive side of the ball, because on defense, when it comes to the personnel that we're paying, the money just doesn't make sense, right? To pay Tyron, to pay Cam, to pay Demario Davis. We got rid of Lattimore. I love Lattimore. I love all the guys that I'm talking about on the defensive side. The defense was great for its time. But right now, you're paying a premium for almost like not even mid defense, really bad defense. And you just don't need to pay as much. Now, as a whole, the defensive side doesn't take the majority of the cap space, I don't think. But it's like you buy what you get for, right? Like there's a saying in Spanish where the cheap ends up being expensive. And even though the defensive side of the ball is not that pricey, I still think it's not worth the money that we are paying. I love the personnel, the Demario Davis, Tyron, Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan should be a Hall of Famer, but it just doesn't make sense on the defensive side. So if you want to rebuild and blow it up, I would be okay with blowing up the defensive side. Just because you can draft better, it's easier to draft, it's easier to coach, you can get a defensive coordinator, and you can just build your offense up and then have the defense follow versus vice versa. That's what I think.
The problem with the NFL or sports in general, is that you have to pay before you see the product a lot of the time. So like last year, you would say, well, the defense is the best side of the ball. Like Demario Davis was like a top 5 linebacker last year. Like some of these players were playing out of their mind. So problem is last year you're like, all right, cool. Money was worth it. This year it's like, these players are kind of slipped up. These players have been injured. These players haven't been as good. So then all of a sudden the money looks very different, right? So that's the problem with contracts sometimes, where you pay a guy, he has a pay running back, he has a 1,700-yard season. It's like, damn, here we go, baby. We're good. We're locked in. Money well spent. Next year he gets hurt or has a bad year. It's like, damn, what the hell just happened? So I think the defense is aging. I think the defense is getting worse, and sometimes that happens rapidly. I think it happened rapidly for the Saints. So, I would start to retool. I would start to refill some of those impact positions. But, it is just kind of part of how contracts work and how, like, seeing things forward work in the NFL.
James, all right. The offensive side of the ball, I think, is actually a lot more set than what I think a lot of Saints fans believe. A lot of Saints fans are calling for Ben Johnson to come.
See, I think this is kind of surprising. I mean, granted, this was 2 weeks ago, but I think this is kind of surprising because I think the offensive side of the ball is the side that obviously needs retooling. You aren't going anywhere with the weapons that we have. To me, the offensive side of the ball is Talise Fuaga, Eric McCoy, Alvin Kamara, and that is it. Like everything else is like so up in the air. Chris Olave, we don't even know if he's going to come back. Rashid Shaheed. I mean, are we sold on him? I am certainly not. And then you have the combination of Jawan Foster, Cedric Wilson, MVS, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, Bub Means, Mason Tipton. Like, are we sold on them? No. Are we sold on Cesar Ruiz? Are we sold on Trevor Penning? Are we sold on our left guards, whoever it may be, Lucas Patrick or Nick Saldiveri or whoever's playing there? Are we sold on our backup running backs? Are we sold on Kendra Miller? Are we sold on Jordan Mims? Are we sold on Dallin Holker? Like, he's had one catch this season. Like, the defensive side of the ball, I could be talked into a lot more. I could be talked into Kool-Aid and Paulson Adebo if he came back, and Alontae Taylor and Pete Werner, and even like Tyrann and Willie Gay and Chase Young and Brian Brzee. I could be Carl Granders. I could be talked into some of these players. I can't be talked into Cedric Wilson, Dante Pettis, Mason Tipton, Bub Me. I think the offensive side is the side that really needs a retool.
To hire all these offensive gurus. You don't really need that, right? Like Klint Kubiak, let's give him his flowers to this extent. Is his play calling the best? Let's say it's not. I think it's better than average, but let's say it's not. I know sometimes he gets away from the run, but look, if you get a guy, you draft a guy who was a right guard in the first round, you move him to left guard, and then you have the worst left tackle in the NFL. You move him to right tackle. Excuse me, not Fuaga was a right tackle, not a right guard. I meant right tackle to left tackle, and a left tackle to right tackle. That's what I meant. But you have that, and they both have a lot of success. Okay, Fuaga put Myles Garrett on an island. Okay, like that was insane. Now whether it's you have to give Clint his flowers, or like either way. Let's say it's the scheme, and the scheme is protecting Fuaga. Okay, well the scheme is Klint Kubiak. Let's say it's Fuaga doing it, taking it on his own. Well, who drafted him? It's probably Klint Kubiak. So the offensive side is good. Give me one more voice call, and I'll finish this thought. I want to get your thoughts.
You also got to remember, positional coaches exist, so you have to give your flowers to the offensive line coaches and things like that. So you have to factor that in as well.
All right, James. So I don't think on the offensive side, I don't think if we go and beg for Ben Johnson to come to the Saints, I don't think that's going to matter. Okay? I think if we just stay with who we are, not saying I'm not open to it, but if we just kind of stay with where we're at, if we have Darren Rizzi as the culture guy, we have Clint as a scheme and play caller. Okay, on the offensive side, we will be established. Here's what I mean. So with any quarterback that has had any relative success, chances are they're going to have a culture, personnel, and scheme already established. Okay, Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love, Sam Darnold is having success in that. Tom Brady, any good quarterback.
Well, a lot of those situations too, you're talking about like premier play callers, premier head coaches, like Kevin O'Connell, one of the best offensive minds in the NFL. You know, like Matt LaFleur, Andy Reid. You're talking about some like elite level offensive guys. So putting Klint Kubiak up there, that there is more to it than just culture and whatever. I mean, these are like prime time level, top of the mountain when it comes to offensive minds.
Has had that established already. So what the Saints should do is see what they have in Spencer Rattler. If he's the guy, okay, great. If he's not, well, then you're going to go get a top round pick regardless, a top 20 pick regardless. But leave zero excuses for him. So in that way, you can actually know, okay, we have a system established. All right, Spencer Rattler's not the guy. Move on. And then someone else can come in either by draft or by free agency to where they can have immediately success once they play for the Saints. Does that make sense? So I don't know what your thoughts are, James. Blow up the defense, keep the offense. Spencer Rattler, go.
I mean, I think Spencer Rattler, like I like Rattler. He was horrible at times, but I think it's he's a 5th round draft pick. I think it'd be crazy if we were to play him in the last 4 games and then make like any kind of like really broad stroke decision. Like imagine passing up a CJ Stroud because you're like, you know what? We might have something in this 5th round guy we drafted. It's like, no, you take the CJ Stroud. Like you don't, and the reason I'm saying that is because like we got quarterbacks coming up in this draft that, no one expected CJ Stroud to be immediately how good he was, but it seems crazy. On one hand, it seems crazy to risk missing on a player for Spencer Rattler. On the second hand, it seems crazy to play Rattler with the wide receivers we have and Jake Haener, or the wide receivers we have, the offensive line we have, and say, you know what, Rattler or Haener, you got 4 games and we're going to determine the future of this franchise off of those 4 games. That seems like a bit of a risk. All right, Austin Jacobs is going to take us home here, the main event.
Hey, man, I'm a huge fan of your channel. And honestly, this Saints season, man, has really got to me. And honestly, I'm just really at a crossroads. Like, I'm looking at kind of like, I guess it's a little too early to look at next year. Would it be better to start offloading a lot of the contracts this offseason? Like, I know we should keep Kamara and some still impactful guys like him, but would it be smart to just cut Derek Carr in a year, try to get off that contract and see what Rattler can do? I know it's a lot to ask of him, but would it be the best situation to see what he can do next year? So if like next season fails, which most likely is a good chance it could happen, to see what we have at him as a quarterback, and maybe the next draft to see if we have to draft a quarterback to replace him, or what are some of the options would you suggest that you're thinking of that we could basically help get this team back to its glory days? I know it's not a bad team right now. We're not a bad franchise because we still can do a lot of things, but I'm just curious, what is your take on what can the Saints do to at least get back to the glory days? Is it drafting a quarterback early in the first round, or is it just keep doing what we're doing, offloading some players, trying to keep retooling? What would your take on it? I know it's still early, and I know the Saints can still make the playoffs. Obviously, it'd be a sweet thing to see, but what is your take on just the outline of what's possibly that should come of?
I mean, the fastest possible way back to being really good is to find like a generational quarterback, whether it's through the draft or whether it's through free agency or through a trade or whatever else. But I mean, you see with the Cincinnati Bengals, like they went from being a complete laughingstock to getting Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And all right, cool, it's over. And then you look at the Detroit Lions, who kind of did it the slower way, where they rebuilt all over the place and then went and got Jared Goff outside of the draft. Okay, cool, they're sweet, right? They're good everywhere. So the straight line way to do this is you have to get good players. You have to fill the roster with good players. However you got to do it, whether it's through free agency, whether it's through the draft, whether it's through trades, but you got to get good players. If you have mediocre players, you're going to be a mediocre team. So that's the first thing we got to do is bring. And a lot of people, it's easy to be like, they're so focused on offloading or releasing or cutting or whatever. There's two sides to it. Like, okay, you're cutting Derek Carr. What are you doing? Then what? Playing Spencer Rattler? You're probably going to be in the same situation. And are you firing Darren Rizzi? Are you bringing in a new coach to go along with Spencer Rattler? Who the hell's going to do that? So then you're just prolonging the Saints being bad to do what? You're gonna go through a whole nother year of this just to see what you have in Spencer Rattler? That's not how this works. You have preseason, you have training camp, you have practice every day, you have game footage, you have walkthroughs, you have all that stuff. Like, that's where you're making the decision. You don't risk an entire year of the franchise to do an experiment of, well, let's see what we have in this 5th round guy who cost us $600,000. Like, who cares? That is not how it works. You go take a shot, draft somebody, trade for somebody, sign somebody, get other good players, lean on them. It is not. You got to also factor in like how much time is spent with these players and coaches. It's not just, well, I guess we got to see what we have in Spencer Rattler, so let's give him an entire another year of the franchise. Because let's say you do that, and let's say you're the worst team in the NFL. Well, you just burned through a year of Alvin Kamara. You just burned through a year of all these other players. So why, for what? For Spencer Rattler? Nah, that is not how it's going to go.
Hey man, it's Austin again. Just kind of part 2 off the recording I sent. Honestly, I know culture is a big thing too with it. Like, would it be just smart to see after the season we win whatever we do, we win a couple games? Is it smart just to keep Darren Rizzi if it looks good, and just keep trying to rebuild the team? Obviously, we need younger players, realistically more healthier players.
I mean, Darren Rizzi is not the only culture builder in the world. I mean, like, if I asked you, who do you think would build, if you're starting an NFL team, let's say you're starting an expansion, the Biloxi, Mississippi Shuckers. If I told you got to get a coach, you got to hire your first head coach, and he's going to set the standard, he's going to set the foundation, he's going to set the culture, and I told you can have Darren Rizzi or John Gruden, would you be like, well, I got to get Rizzi for the culture? No. Like, John Gruden could probably build or would build his own culture. Would it be successful? I don't know. Is Rizzi successful? I don't know. Vrabel, he's going to build his own culture. So Rizzi is not the only answer to the culture question. You have to build a culture. No doubt. Every coach in the NFL will do that. And hopefully anyone you bring in will do that. So it is not like, the answer isn't, well, we need to build a culture, so we have to go with Darren Rizzi.
And more impactful players, that's always the key when you think about drafting, is like what guys can be impactful. Like with the Rams, with Puka Nacua, getting him was a steal for them. Guys like that. Like, would it be smart to just like kind of like start offloading, like I said before, and just start getting players, start fixing the O-line, getting some depth there, same as the defensive line, getting some younger guys. Like, obviously Cam Jordan's probably going to retire. He should. Dude's a hell of a player. Like, would it be smart to just start just trying to just fix things and just really get younger? Obviously, you don't want to just draft a young player that's not going to play well, and you have to develop. Like, if you start drafting guys like Plessis Fuaga, if you can find guys like him in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds, hitting on them players, is it just kind of like just see as like just drafting young studs or trying to find young studs in the free agents that everybody's sleeping on? And like Derek Carr, I know he's not having a bad season. He's not a bad player. Obviously, he's not the future. Like, would it just be smart?
So I'll leave you with this. What do you think would be better for the Saints? If I give you option A or option B? And option A, releasing Derek Carr, releasing Tyrann Mathieu, or just say offloading. So either release or whatever. Derek Carr, Tyrann Mathieu, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Ryan Ramczyk. Get rid of all of them. Or option B, and this is all you know. So all you know is we offloaded those 5 players. Or option B, if the Saints drafted the next Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, just that. Let's say they draft the next Kyren Williams, the next Puka Nacua. Well, let's say Cooper Kupp too. So you get the next, or let's say option A, offloading all those players. Option B, the Saints draft the next Brock Bowers, the next Puka Nacua, and the next Kyren Williams. You would take option B. You would say, damn, if we can bring in one draft, we can bring in an absolute stud tight end, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, and a stud running back. Yeah. So, and that's regardless of what else happens. Like we didn't say offloading anybody in option B. It is way more important to bring in. It is way more important to get good players, to have impactful players, to nail the draft. Fans can be so focused on getting rid of. They got to answer the question of how do we get good? If you get rid of all those players, we're still going to have a game on Sunday. So who is in their position? If you get rid of Demario Davis, okay, who's your new linebacker? Are you getting him through free agency? Are you getting him through the draft? If you're not answering that question, then we're just going to kind of keep circling back of like average player, below average player, and we're just going to keep losing. So before you can focus on the offloading, you got to focus on the building. You got to focus on the bringing in good players. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Hour and 40 minutes. Good Lord, have mercy. I let that slip. So I'm going to have to stay on top of the speak pipe. My fault. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next video.